That escalated quickly. CJ Gardner-Johnson, his time in Baltimore, it abruptly ends, and we dive into everything that happened and the answers that are needed in terms of CJ Gardner-Johnson and just why it ended this way. All that and more coming up on this instant reaction edition of Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Ravens. Welcome into the show. I'm your host, Kevin Ostreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much for being here on this Tuesday afternoon, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. And thank you out there, of course, to all the everydayers, the first-time listeners. If you're somewhere in the middle, thank you as well. And while we're going live today, the situation even had me stumbling in the intro. I don't understand what's going on. That's how crazy it is. I'm looking for words. CJ Gardner-Johnson, his time in Baltimore abruptly ends. It is over. He lasted 1 week with the Ravens. We'll dive into what's going on, what happened, what answers are needed, because we definitely need them after this whole situation. And maybe we'll talk a little bit about it. I think we have to, how the writing almost maybe was on the wall here for CJ Gardner-Johnson after a series of events. So that's another intriguing part to the whole situation. We'll also dive into where Baltimore goes from here, some bye-week questions, both my bye-week questions, and then also if you're live with us, or even if you're listening or watching after the fact, you can comment down below in the video or message me, and I want to answer as many questions as I can alongside my own questions here. So again, thank you to everybody for being here. I know, again, this is not usually an afternoon program. It's Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. Eastern time, but the instant reaction episodes, we've had a lot of them recently because, well, there's just been a lot of Ravens news. What can I say? Today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. All right, well, CJ Gardner-Johnson, it was fun while it lasted. It was, lots of memories with CJ Gardner-Johnson here for me. I'll never forget when we did our instant reaction show a week ago, right? That was fun. He had some nice practice highlights. Those are always going to be fun to look back on. He wore the number 6. Lots of fun and fond memories of CJ Gardner-Johnson here for me. But no, I mean, in all seriousness, this situation took such an escalated turn. Like, this kind of came out of nowhere, but at the same time, did it really? So here's the skinny of it. Adam Schefter, he reported that the Ravens and CJ Gardner-Johnson mutually agreed to part ways, essentially. And in his tweet, in Adam Schefter's tweet about the release, he added that Gardner-Johnson's agent said, quote, "After the Ravens traded for a safety, we were looking for a clearer path to play." And look, we know the order of operations here for this Ravens team, right? We know and we understand that, right? Where for Baltimore, they made the move for CJ Gardner-Johnson before they traded it off Owe for Alohi Gilman, right? So that was the order of operations. CJ Gardner-Johnson came in first, and then after that, Alohi Gilman came in. And we know that, look, Alohi Gilman played a really big role for the Ravens in the week number 6 game against the Rams. So it wasn't necessarily like, are they going to be fighting for playing time or anything along those lines? It kind of felt like Gilman had, a pretty big role, as you can probably hear the sirens rolling by outside. But, I think that for me, I get it. I understand it. But at the same time, I still think Gardner-Johnson could have had a role, if I'm being honest. I feel like he could have had a role. I don't know if it would have been as big. In fact, it probably would not have been as big as the one that maybe he and John Harbaugh and Eric DeCosta talked about before acquiring Alohi Gilman. But I still think his versatility would have been really good for the Ravens. His ability to turn the ball over, particularly in the interception department, right? That I think would be good. So, I mean, I guess it's unfortunate, but we do know that CJ Gardner-Johnson has a history of, causing some drama off of the field, right? We know that. Apparently, reportedly, that was one of the reasons why he was let go from Houston. And, it followed him in Philadelphia for a little bit. And, it kind of felt like, even with his answer, I think that was Thursday, man. Everything seems so bunched up and so spread apart at the same time. I think it was Thursday. CJ Gardner-Johnson said to Sam Jane of the Baltimore Sun that, hey, Baltimore is my only option. That's something that, probably, I don't know, didn't sit the right way. I'm not sure. But this just is, it's so weird for me. Like, I understand and I see people talking, and I said that if you were with me, I want to make this clear. If you were with me in the early days of the CJ Gardner-Johnson, which literally was last week, but if you were with me in the early days of this whole situation, I said that this had two ways of ending. CJ Gardner-Johnson was either going to be in Baltimore for 6 years and become a mainstay on that defense, or it was going to be gone in like 3 weeks for cursing out John Harbaugh or something, or making some drama. Well, I don't know if it escalated to the point of cursing out John Harbaugh. I just don't think it had enough time to, but seems like the second option, in fact, not seems, it is the second option, won out. So I just, it's not necessarily like, it's not a good look for the Ravens, but at the same time, it's also not a good look for CJ Gardner-Johnson. Like, I don't necessarily blame CJ Gardner-Johnson for wanting more playing time after the Ravens traded for a safety, but, I also don't blame the Ravens for wanting to get him in because they needed somebody. Like, at the time before they traded for Alohi Gilman, they needed somebody to come in and be that guy that just had experience, right? So they at least understood that, hey, we can't keep going with these veteran guys, or not veteran, but like they needed the veteran guys. They couldn't keep going with the rookies that they had, or the inexperienced players that they had. But it still makes me wonder, like, what was the real plan beforehand with CJ Gardner-Johnson? Because Gilman and Gardner-Johnson, like, they have similarities, but, Gilman is more of like a run support player. He sometimes struggles in coverage, Gardner-Johnson more like you can play him in the slot and you can put him back in single high if you want to. He's more of a ball hawk type player. So it wasn't like Gilman and Gardner-Johnson were completely redundant and canceled each other out as players, right? I still think that the skill set of Gardner-Johnson could have been useful for the Ravens, but I guess it changed plans. And the thing with the OA trade was Harbaugh said that it came together fast. And, if that was the case, they might not have had an opportunity to communicate with Gardner-Johnson and anything was happening, because maybe they didn't know. Maybe they did know. I don't know. Like, that's another answer. I think that would be, I'd appreciate that answer if we kind of knew how quickly did that trade come together, and would that have prevented this? And again, he literally never played a snap for the Ravens. He was with Baltimore for a week. He made those comments about him being there, and this was my only option. So I don't know. At this point, you kind of have to look at it as it is what it is. He didn't have an opportunity to make a play on the field. He didn't have an opportunity to mess anything up on the field for the Ravens. It's kind of just like, okay, whatever. But you know what? It's a good opportunity to kind of look back and reminisce on some Ravens legends that never were. And I guess CJ Gardner-Johnson, he was on the team for a week. So I guess that also with a single digit number 2, which is crazy. I mean, he said, hey, I'm picking number 6 here. And that single digit number now is back open for anybody who wants it. But, this is in the line of a long list of just weird situations for the Ravens over the past calendar year, whether it be the Deontay Johnson situation when they acquired him. Obviously Eddie Jackson had his comments, Marcus Williams, and who Marcus handled it like a pro when he was with the team. He obviously spoke out about it after he ended up being released by the Ravens and that whole situation. But it's just very rare for the Ravens, I guess maybe not anymore, to be in these situations over this point. So I don't know. And again, I want to know, and we're probably not going to find it out, right? But like, I seriously want to know, like, what was the role that was promised? Because again, this was not a practice squad signing where CJ Gardner-Johnson was just going to stay on the practice squad for the tenure of his Ravens career, whatever it was. I'm sure there was a plan to, elevate him. But then when he wasn't elevated last week for the Rams game, Gilman was able to play, was able to get a lot of snaps in. That was kind of curious to me. there were other situations within this Gardner-Johnson situation. So it was situations within the situation, which did raise some eyebrows and raised the eyebrows of a lot of people as well when it came to, was CJ Gardner-Johnson actually going to play for this team, or did he already have his eyes set on somewhere else, or just another opportunity in general? So while I should say, oh, is it shocking that Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, this is how it ends with him? No, not necessarily, because we've seen things with CJ Gardner-Johnson in the past, whether with drama. And that was one of the things John Harbaugh talked about, his attitude and stuff along those lines. So I don't know, but we will see what ends up happening there. So I think we're gonna have to talk about in the second part of the show what that opportunity potentially is that CJ Gardner-Johnson is eyeing, that maybe he wanted to get out of Baltimore. We'll see. It was a mutual decision, but seems like Gardner-Johnson maybe was the driving force here. I don't know. So we'll talk about that and a lot more coming up in the second part of our Locked On Ravens instant reaction episode. Stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. First, the show is brought to you by BILT. Nobody likes paying rent, but if you must, you might as well get something for it. That's where BILT comes in. BILT is changing the game by turning your rent payment into real rewards you can actually use. When you pay rent through BILT, you earn flexible points that can be redeemed towards hundreds of hotels and airlines, future rent payment, your next Lyft ride, and more. But BILT isn't just about rent. It's about rewarding you around your entire neighborhood. I love that with BILT, your rent finally works for you. You're earning points every month on something you already have to pay. Whether I'm grabbing food at my favorite local restaurant or heading to the gym, I'm still earning rewards. And BILT has made everyday life feel more rewarding, from your neighborhood to your travel plans. Turn your rent into rewards and start earning points around your neighborhood by going to joinbuilt.com/LockedOnNFL. That's joinbilt.com/LockedOnNFL. Make sure to use that link so they know we sent you. And the show is brought to you by Rugiet. And guys, you probably heard of Viagra, Cialis, maybe you've even tried them, but if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rugiet Go Long. It's exactly where Rugiet's Go Long comes in. It isn't just another ED pill, it's a total game changer for confidence. Go Long combines 2 doctor-trusted medications in one dual-action formula. The effects can last up to 36 hours, and the process is simple. Connect with a board-certified doctor 100% online, and if prescribed, your treatment ships discreetly right to your door. Ready to level up your confidence? Head to Rugiet.com and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for 15% off your first order. Again, ready to level up your confidence in the bedroom? Head to Rugiet.com, Rugiet.com, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for 15% off your first order. That's Rugiet.com, promo code LOCKEDONNFL. Make sure to use our code so they know we sent you. Moving along on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher still here with you on this Tuesday afternoon. Thank you, everybody, for being here, instantly reacting with me to the abrupt escalation of the CJ Gardner-Johnson news that, well, he's no longer with the team. He lasted a whole week in Baltimore, maybe longer than some people thought he would. I don't know. I mean, I thought he'd be able to stay on the team a little longer, but the Ravens and Gardner-Johnson officially part ways mutually, and the Ravens now have to fill that void. We might be making history on Locked On Ravens, maybe not only just on this show, it's definitely this show, but across the entire network here on the Locked On Podcast Network. This might be the first instant reaction show that this network has ever done for a practice squad release. We're doing an instant reaction. And again, it's like we need to. The situation is so wild that, it's kind of crazy. But I wouldn't be shocked if this is the first instant reaction show this network has done in terms of a practice squad player being released. So thanks, everybody, for being here again. We're 5 days a week plus more here on Locked On Ravens, and we have our regular show Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. Eastern time. We did a show this morning about John Harbaugh hinting at some potential bye-week changes on the offensive line, maybe a pass rusher. So if you haven't checked that out, be sure to do so. We have instant reaction shows like this during games. We have Locked On Ravens watch-alongs to react to every single play. We also have the instant reaction shows after games, Locked On Ravens squad show, twice per week with myself, Sam Njoku, and Kadri Ismail. So, man, I don't know. I mean, look, so we talked about a little bit how this Ravens team signed CJ Gardner-Johnson. They brought in Alohi Gilman, and then that probably CJ Gardner-Johnson's like, well, wait a second, where's my playing time going to be? And I don't know what the role that was promised for CJ Gardner-Johnson was going to be, but clearly he was not happy with it, but was he eyeing another opportunity? That is the next question a lot of people are asking right now. I don't know. This ended up coming out yesterday around 3 p.m. There was a tweet that CJ Gardner-Johnson liked. Now, the Eagles defense has been in shambles, right? The Eagles are also just kind of in shambles right now. They're looking for help. And someone tweeted, bring back CJ Gardner-Johnson at Eagles. Defense had no heart. And then there was more to that tweet. And apparently CJ Gardner-Johnson followed this person back and liked the tweet. And that got a lot of people thinking, well, CJ Gardner-Johnson's not on the Ravens active roster. A team could sign him off the practice squad. Gardner-Johnson, I saw people saying maybe Gardner-Johnson doesn't want to be there anymore. And especially the comments that he made on Thursday about, hey, this was my only option. Maybe, I don't know. Did he want to be there? He said that he was, and the follow-up to those comments was Sam Jane talking about how he was already, talking with teammates, making a good impression in the locker room early. So I don't think CJ Gardner-Johnson was like, oh, I'll just do it. And then, I'll leave when I can. But probably the move of Gilman soured him. And that's probably what happened. And yeah, I see Zeke talking about CJ wasn't wrong for saying that. I don't think he was wrong for saying it was brutally honest. It was a brutally honest thing to say, but it was honest. And we know CJ Gardner-Johnson is, is not going to hold back on what he's saying. And I think that, again, I don't think he was wrong for saying it in terms of like being honest, right? But it's going to be construed in a lot of different ways when you say something like that. I think that's where, the risk comes in when you say something like that. And it was like, again, people were saying, okay, well, he doesn't want to be there. And I didn't think that. I mean, we talked about it on the Friday show, but I think that the way that he said it, or at least, again, how he said it, how it was put out there by, what it was going to cause conversation. So I don't know if CJ Gardner-Johnson goes back to the Eagles, then, I guess we know what the whole situation was, but he still probably felt he didn't have a path to playing time in Baltimore anymore. And things probably changed pretty quickly. I mean, look, we did back-to-back literally within hours, right? That's the thing. Like, how fast did this thing come together? That Tuesday was crazy for me. I remember it. It was only a week ago. But, we did the CJ Gardner-Johnson live at, I think, around 2 p.m. And then the OA trade happened for Gilman maybe, 2-3 hours after that. We did the OA trade live at 5 here on Locked On Ravens. So span of about 3 hours, essentially. I'll call it 3 hours, maybe even a little less. The Ravens made that move. So in their conversations with CJ Gardner-Johnson, I'm curious, like, that's why I was asking that in the first part of the show. Like, did that not come up in those conversations? Like, hey, we're about to make this move, or did the move literally come together within 3 hours? I don't know the answer to that question. That's why I think those answers are needed. We'll probably not get them, but I'd be curious to know that situation. I see Mogg saying I would have been fine with keeping CJ, but he was basically free anyway. I mean, again, it's not like it's different than Deontay. And again, Deontay, they didn't really give up any assets for him either. They gave up something, but it wasn't like some crazy package for him. But it was kind of like a trial period, both sides trying it out. So again, it's not the biggest loss in the world, but it just continues to add on and stack on to a couple of really weird situations. And I'm trying to maneuver through social media here and I see that Todd Monken and Zach Orr are currently talking to the media here on Tuesday. So we'll get into those comments a little bit, probably on tomorrow's show. But I mean, you have a lot of options if you're the Ravens. I think Gardner-Johnson gave you more, though, which I think I'm not saying is this. I mean, I guess it is disappointing in a way that this happened, but I was curious. I just wanted to see him on the field. I wanted to see if he was a fit, because I still think he's a talented player. He had his problems in Houston, and why he was released was he apparently reportedly couldn't pick up the system. And, there maybe was some off-field stuff there too with him, but I wanted to see him in a defense with guys like Kyle Hamilton and, Roquan and Marlon, seeing if you could elevate maybe those guys' play and see. But the Ravens secondary also, you want to know another weird situation, by the way? Talking about weird situations, what in the world is going on with Jair Alexander right now? I have a hard time believing personally, this is just my opinion, I have a hard time believing that Jair Alexander has all of a sudden become so bad overnight that he doesn't deserve any snaps, especially with their secondary situation right now. What a weird situation this has been. I'm not saying Jair Alexander is the best corner in the league. I'm not saying he played well against Buffalo and he earned more playing time, because he didn't. He was bad against the Bills. And the Ravens, they did their thing, right? They brought him into the team. They got him up to speed and into shape, and he's being active and not getting snaps. And, John Harbaugh talked about how, felt like in the secondary they could have used Jair. I mean, the secondary this year for the Ravens is just so weird right now. I mean, I think Jair fully healthy can help this team. I don't think he has to play 100% of the snaps or anything. But again, like this, if you're not going to play him, why bring him in the first place? I mean, was that game against Buffalo so bad that all of a sudden they decided, yeah, we're not going to use him anymore? Was he so out of shape? I don't know. I don't know what's going on there. But again, that's what I'm talking about with this CJ Gardner-Johnson situation is we just don't know those answers. And, John Harbaugh and his answers provide sometimes very little transparency into what's going on. They want to keep every little competitive advantage that they can, but that kind of leaves everybody else in the dark. And again, they're not necessarily obligated to say anything. Like, they don't have to tell the world what their plans are. And I think that there is a little, hey, competitive advantage here and not giving away something. There is truth to that, but I think the Ravens take it to such an extreme. You just kind of wonder, like, what is going on in an organization? It honestly raises more questions than it does answers. So, and I see Ashley talking about it here, and I agree with you, Ashley. Jair shouldn't have played in week 1. I don't believe he was ready. I agree with you, Ashley. I think that, that I don't want to say rushed, but I think that, they tried to get him back and it just didn't work. But I don't think that, again, him not having practice for like ever, coming back, and then him essentially playing, not even having experience in the defense. Like, I don't know. But again, it adds on Jair Alexander. That situation's weird. CJ Gardner-Johnson, that situation's weird too. So I don't know. I have no idea. So, there's a lot of conversation right now around this team. They're 1-5. Their bye week honestly couldn't have come at a better time. Second year in a row, honestly, that has happened. And, I remember complaining last year before the season started. I was here on the show doing it about how, oh man, this bye week is so late. They're going to have to go through such a grind of a season. And then the bye week was coming up. I'm like, yes, this is such a good thing, the bye week. So even this year, the bye week was a little early. It wasn't as egregious as being so late last year, but I guess the bye week football, the bye week football guys, they know what's going on and saying, hey, we know exactly when to give this team a bye. So, and I see the conversations about Malachi as well in the chat right now. I mean, look, has Malachi played exceptional football for the Ravens this season? No, he hasn't. But he's also a rookie. He's played 6 games for this team. He's admitted to overthinking. It takes time. And actually, this is a good conversation to have about, honestly, this whole rookie class and how the Ravens kind of go through and evaluate rookies and play their rookies. The Ravens do not like playing rookies unless there's a clear path to playing time for them. So Malachi was in that conversation. Linderbaum, obviously Tyler Loop with him being the kicker. Patrick Queen, like high up level draft picks, or, with Loop and some of the other guys. But I personally preferred Nicky Manwari over Malachi Starks, right? I said that. If you go back and listen to my draft shows, I liked both players a lot, but I think that Manwari, him and Kyle Hamilton in the same defense was just so intriguing to me. Manwari's playing lights out football. That doesn't mean Malachi's a bad player, though. Just because Malachi's not playing great right now, where he's had his rookie moments, he's allowed to have those rookie moments, in my opinion. But here's the thing with the Ravens and where they are as a franchise. And I've talked about this, honestly, since Patrick Queen came in. I was talking about this in 2020. I've talked about it for essentially 5 years here on this show. The Ravens, in the way that they are structured and their expectations, them being Super Bowl, right? These rookies are not going to have the same runway that other rookies have on whether rebuilding teams or teams that are just coming up. So, bringing in a guy like CJ Gardner-Johnson, Alohi Gilman, some of those veterans, even if that did take away from Malachi, it's not the Ravens, if it did, saying, oh, Malachi, he's not ready. He might not be ready right now. He might not be, but he has to play. But now the Ravens bring in vets, and you're like, oh, okay, now you can kind of work and see what's going on here with Malachi. But the Ravens, with their expectations, a rookie mistake in a game that gives up a touchdown or gives up a big play, it's not just like oh, darn, do better next time. Right? It's that might have just cost us the game, which costs us maybe seeding, which costs us maybe spot in our division, which costs us maybe chance at the postseason. It's that spiral effect. So Mike Green not being as productive as people hoped, right? All of that. It's not about like, oh, Malachi is terrible. He's not. I don't think he is. Before we make that assumption, I'd have to see him playing a lot more games before we start making that assumption. But in my opinion, I do think the rookies deserve a little more slack, but at the same time, it doesn't underscore that the mistakes that they are making or the lack of impact that they are having is hurting this team in multiple different ways. So I'm not pinning this on Malachi. I think it's unfair to do that right now. It's okay to say, hey, he hasn't played great or at least up to expectations so far. I get it and I understand it, and that is true. But I do want to give Malachi more time. I do. I feel like he's someone that will turn it around. I have that belief. I have that hope. Is it a guarantee? No, but I have trust in Malachi's talent and ability. The problem is with the team being so bad and the defense being so bad. Plus, he's being thrust in a tough spot right now, and the defense is terrible all the way around. Star players aren't stepping up and doing their job. So that does leave a lot more responsibility on the rookies. And, it's a lot for guys. Even when you go to a program like Georgia, which is, you get ready for the NFL in that program, it's tough still to be a rookie and come in and make an impact. Some rookies can do it really easily. Others, it takes more time. But sometimes when it takes more time, the rewards that you get from those rookies, maybe they can be greater than guys that make immediate impact. So I'm not giving up on Malachi yet. I understand the play hasn't been great so far, but I want to give him a little more time, as I've said. So coming up with the final part of the show, we'll be diving into some bye-week questions for the Ravens. Of course, we have a lot of questions about the CJ Gardner-Johnson situation, but I'm going to dive into some questions I have. And then if anybody who is watching live, or if you're with us after the fact, video form or audio form, if you have any questions, be sure to comment those in the live chat or comment them down below and we'll get to them. So be sure to stay tuned. As many as I can, we'll get to them coming up here on this instant reaction live edition of Locked On Ravens. First, this show is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Now, I love how FanDuel gives me so many ways to play. I've built parlays, tried player props, and even followed the live lines during games. Makes watching football even more exciting when you've got a little something riding on the action. Whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. For that Ravens and Rams game in week 6, the Rams came into that game as 7-point road favorites in M&T Bank Stadium. So, if you went with that, probably living large over on FanDuel. And also, maybe you had like a Tyler Higbee anytime touchdown, and maybe you went a little crazy with that over on FanDuel. You're probably living large with that too. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Moving right along on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Ostreicher here with you, instantly reacting to the crazy, abrupt Chauncey Gardner-Johnson situation. Maybe stunning, but maybe not so stunning because maybe the writing was on the wall like we talked about. Again, appreciate everybody for being here Tuesday afternoon. Usually have this in the mornings. At least our regular show is in the mornings, right? It's Monday through Friday at 6 a.m. Eastern time. We had a show this morning on some of John Harbaugh's comments, but we have so much daily Ravens coverage and content for you each and every single day. And if you have a friend or a family member who wants daily Ravens coverage or wants the Ravens perspective, be sure to send them our way. We have them covered just like we have you covered on Locked On Ravens. You can also follow me on social media, ChaosStriker34 on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. We actually just put out Chauncey Gardner-Johnson Ravens highlights over on Twitter. So, you have to go check it out because I thought I did a funny job with that. But, it's fun to do this every single day. It's amazing. And despite the fact that the team is not good at this point, they're 1-5, we still show up here every single day on Locked On Ravens and talk about them. Tomorrow will be episode 1,618 consecutively for me. I've never missed an episode since taking over this show in 2019, and I pride myself on that consistency. So let's dive into some questions here for me first, and then I'll get to some of the questions that are here in the live chat. And then if you're not live with us, either in video form or audio form, I'll do my best to answer those questions after the fact if you want to comment them down below on the video. So my questions for the Ravens entering the bye week, I want to see if they are serious about making changes. And in that, I want to see if they're serious about this season, right? I think if the Ravens are serious about this season, they will make changes. It doesn't look like that's going to be a coaching change, right? John Harbaugh's made that clear a couple of times. And I know that John Harbaugh likes to keep everything close to the vest and maybe something does happen, but he's made it about as clear as he can that I don't know. I think that it's not happening. I feel like it's not happening right now. And if there was a time for it to happen, to make it make sense, to have it make sense, I think that the bye week would probably be that, because you're not prepping for an opponent, and you have time to kind of figure out what you want to do defensively, old versus new system. But it doesn't feel like that's going to happen. Maybe they do something, but I think that for John Harbaugh, his comments, make it seem clear. So I don't know. And actually, I think I just got what is this? It says, all right, so we'll get to this in a couple minutes. It's not breaking news or anything, but it does have context to maybe who the Ravens might be trying to acquire in a trade potentially. So we'll talk about that. I just, I think at this point, the Ravens, whether they move on from Zach Orr or Todd Monken or whatnot, philosophies have to change right now. I've said this over and over. I said it, I don't even know how long I've been saying it for. Really, almost the entire season, probably. The Ravens, their on-field product is not good right now. We know that. But you have to figure out what's going on off the field first. And whether that is messaging, whether that is accountability. And this all comes from the top, too. I think player actions, we talked about Zay Flowers skipping out on the media after week 6. It's not just Zay who's doing that. Roquan has been doing it, and Marlon apparently has been doing it. And those guys have been blasted by the media, a lot of people who have written articles about it. And I think that mentality kind of does come from the top, right? Where, we're seeing it with John Harbaugh and his answers to me, while they've gotten less aggressive, I think, like that week 3 for his answer, he was getting kind of snappy with his answers and snippy with his answers. But I still think it's kind of just like, take what Rashad Bateman did, for example, right? Rashad Bateman got up there, spoke to the media at his locker, and he said, you know what we're doing right now, the fans deserve to feel how they feel. We're not playing well. And, it's been rough. And he also took accountability for, his play where there was miscommunication, and he made it clear it wasn't giving up on the route. He just thought something was going on. That's the accountability, right? That's the accountability of everything that is going on here with this team. But the changes they're going to have to make, it's going to come in the form, at least on the field, of offensive line. It's going to come on the field of, probably pass rusher. I mean, they need another pass rusher. I think a trade probably has to be in the cards here, because yes, is the season bleak right now? Sure. It is. I mean, they're 1-5. They have to go on a heck of a run here to come out and make this thing reality and go on a run to make the playoffs. But it's not over. The Ravens, I said this on this morning show, they have the 7th easiest strength of schedule remaining. It does open up. They are going to get healthier with hopefully Lamar, Roquan, and Ricard coming back. So I just, there's that part of it. That's the only thing they can hang on to. And that's essentially what John Harbaugh kind of said about that as well. So my question is, my big question is, are they serious about making changes? And that will essentially, to me, look at, are they serious about saving this season? So we'll see. I'm trying to look at questions in the chat to see if I can answer any of them right now. I'm not seeing anything at this point. If you have a question, I'll try to answer one or two of them before I get on out of here. I see a lot of congratulations. Thank you, Jalen, Tila, Shelly. Thank you, Simone. Thank you for D-Wiz. Appreciate you. So if there is a question that you have, I'll try to answer one or two before I get out of here. Another question I would have, I guess, is, what's the sense of urgency right now for the Ravens? And, obviously the answer to that question is probably very high, right? 100%. But what I saw in the game, that doesn't, I'm still very disappointed in how the game ended for the Ravens. I talked about that a lot on the shows for Monday and for this morning, about how they got the ball back down 2 scores with 13 minutes in the fourth quarter and essentially ran the clock out on their drive, which I thought they had a shot to win that game. Was it a high shot? Probably not, but you still had an opportunity and a chance. All right, I'm getting a couple of questions in. We'll do these quickly before I get out of here. Any word on Keaton Mitchell? Know why he's not playing? I don't know. I wish I had a better answer for you. I mean, clearly the messaging from Harbaugh is that he doesn't do enough compared to the other running backs on the field. And, his skill set, is kind of redundant, was essentially the messaging that I got from Harbaugh. But I think he provides you something. I think he needs to play more. And, I feel like it's a problem that they have in terms of either getting too cute or valuing certain skill sets over others that would clearly help them at this point. Joe asking, could CJ not just wait on the practice squad to see if someone plucked him? He could have, Joe. I mean, that was an option. The thing is that now with CJ being released, he essentially can pick his own opportunity on the practice squad. Essentially, the risk of him doing that and staying on the practice squad was a team like, I don't know, the Dolphins or the Browns could have said, hey, we want to sign you. And then he goes, right? And then he goes there to the active roster. So CJ Gardner-Johnson essentially controls his own destiny now that he's back on the free agent market. The world class saying, did you know we're 1-7 is with Voorhees as a starter? I did not know that. World class. Wow. Thank you. Thank you for that information. I did not know that. See, we learn something new every day here on Locked On Ravens, and our community helps us with that. So be sure to be a part of the community, and we have such an amazing one already. And I see, let's try to get to this one here from Zeke. Kevin, when do you think the Ravens will make a move? Bye week could be a good time to do it, but I'm not sure if they actually will during the bye week or if it'll be closer towards the trade deadline. But then there's also the conversation of like, will it be for a pass rusher like a Kayvon Thibodeau or Jermaine Johnson? There was a thing about Jermaine Johnson that I just got notification about, which the Jets want a lot for him a trade. Would the Ravens give up that in a trade? I don't know the answer to that question. I would maybe assume they'd make a move for a pass rusher here during the bye week. He can't go into this thing next week with 3 pass rushers and then maybe something else towards the deadline. But there's a lot of other things there that, you can kind of think about as well. So that's all I have for you here today on this Locked On Ravens Instant Reaction episode. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. On the way out, be sure to like and subscribe button in video form and follow along in audio form for 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens coverage. Again, appreciate everybody for being here and being a part of this amazing community we have here on Locked On Ravens. We'll be back here tomorrow with our morning episode, 6 a.m. Eastern time. So be sure to stay tuned, and I'll see you right back here soon on Locked On Ravens.